This week on Wisdom and Wealth, we're going to talk about some of the immediate things you want to address if you are going through divorce right before retirement. So let's get into it with Donna Kendrick.
This is Donna, and this is Jim, each with a family that had to begin again. As they've brought their worlds together, they've learned a lot about blending families and finances along the way. Now, they're here to help you take on this new chapter with clarity and confidence. This is Wisdom and Wealth, financial clarity for families in transition.
Thanks for tuning into the podcast. This is Wisdom and Wealth with Donna Kendrick from Sefton Financial. And we're going to talk about a couple of immediate things you want to do maybe right away if you are getting ready to experience a divorce and in retirement or leading into retirement, maybe right in that kind of critical area. So we're going to talk about that a little bit with Donna this week. Donna, how are you?
You're doing good. How are you, Mark?
Doing very well. And who better to talk to on some of this stuff than someone who's a certified divorce financial analyst and a CFP. And obviously this is something that you deal with your clients, and it's in your wheelbase there. So let's talk a little bit about a couple of items. Maybe you can just kind of kick things off by giving folks maybe the top couple of suggestions that could help someone, right the ship, or some things to look out for should they be in this scenario.
Yeah. And I love top 3 list, right? Because they're actionable. It feels like something that we can manage and we can walk away with, right? So I'll tell you the top 3 and then we'll kind of dig into them. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
All right. Top 3. Number 1, figure out your flow of income. Where is income coming in now? Where is it going out? And in the future, because if you're about to retire, what does that feel like for pensions that might come through and Social Security, right? We'll dig into that one.
Okay.
The second one is understand your net worth. What do you own? What does your spouse own? What's titled in your own name? And what is, let's just call it that whole egg, right? Because you might be cracking that egg and dividing it in half. Right. And then the last one is making sure that we do, I call it a beneficiary review, right? And that has to do with our life insurances, our retirement funds, and our benefits, right? So we'll stop at number 1. Or go back
All right.
up.
So let's hit number 1. Let's do income.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you're going now down to a single income, right? Big deal.
Yeah. A lot of it, I call it is what's the cost to be you, right? Like what does it cost you to pretty much stay afloat without going into debt right now? And the best way we do that is you can use technology, right? You can do I don't like the word budget. You can do a spending and a transaction app, right? Or just get a piece of paper and flow it down. I have a book out there, Guide to Widowhood. And on there, we actually have a spending transaction, like how much do I pay for insurance? Some of us pay one time a year, some of us pay monthly, right? But that might not be in our monthly budget because we pay once a year, right? What does that look like?
Right.
I think everyone can download that at donnajeankendrick.com. That's where the free resources can come through. But
we'll put a link in the show notes to make it easy for folks. They can just go click it.
Good. Yeah, easy enough. But that's a good form because there's some things we don't think about. I don't think about the cost to feed my 152-pound Newfoundland, right? He's $100 to $200 in dog food a month. And if I'm trying to think I'm moving out on my own, I might be leaving that one with Jim, should him and I be separating, right? Because that might be a cost I can't afford.
Big boy, yeah.
He is. He's a beautiful boy, but he's expensive. He has more on haircuts than I do. Listeners, people on YouTube, I spend more on the Newfoundland's hair than I do on my own. Might be obvious today.
Well, I mean, he's got a lot of it. So
he does. But that's it. Like just inventory it all out. And the best thing is to go back 3 months. And where do you do most of your spending? Is it on your Amex? Is it on your debit card? Right. But go back 3 months and start categorizing. Right. What looks like it's going to be repeatable, and then get 2 highlighters. Get a blue one and a pink one. What is a need and what is a want? What are these? When it costs you to be you, what do you need for that money? And then go there. That's pretty much your starting point.
I love that. I love that idea. What does it cost to be you? That's a great way of putting that.
Yeah, right.
Because everybody, because we all know that everybody's different. How you live, how I live, we're different than each other. But that's a really cool way, simple way of just kind of breaking it down, whether you're single or you're a couple, right? Whether you're not going through a divorce, what does it cost to be you individually with each other and then as a team? So that's a great, I like that. So make sure you think about that one, folks.
So, and then you have to add into it, should we be separating? Like, am I staying in the house, right? Do I have a cash reserve to make improvements on the house? Should I fight to keep it, right? Or are we moving to a rent situation? And you have to add those new costs into that budget.
Yeah.
That's your cash
Yeah.
flow. How much does it cost to be you? And that's your starting point before you even start considering the financial impact of divorce, right?
Okay.
Sometimes it's just divorce, sometimes is a have to, right? Sometimes it's a want to. But sometimes when you get into the finances of it, you start to see things differently. And sometimes the cause of the divorce could be finances. This could actually be a really
Sure.
healthy activity to do together with a financial planner or with your spouse currently to see, is this really one of the catchy points and can we fix something in here? So
Yeah,
I'm the
that's a good
optimist who
point.
worries. I like that one.
Yeah, that's a good point. So let me ask you about the net worth, because you said that was number
Yeah.
2 on the list, right? So oftentimes I think people feel like, well, especially the ladies, and it's not always the case, but like, hey, I want the house. Fine. Just, I want the house. We'll get whatever. But it's not often the biggest asset. We think it is. It might be structurally the biggest asset, but financially it may not be. And I think that's a piece that sometimes get overlooked, because if there's let's just say, make it up, let's just say there's $500,000 in retirement accounts, but the value of the house, should you sell it, for whatever it goes for, and then split that equally, may be half that or less than half that, right? So is it truly your biggest asset? It may be worth to consider that as well.
Exactly. And every asset has, quote unquote, I call it a quality, right? The quality of money, the quality of that asset, right? So is the value of the house, that's not going to be liquid. That's not going to be something you can use unless maybe you get a home equity loan on it. And then at interest rates today, what is that, right?
Right.
Versus a cash account versus a retirement account. A retirement account is qualified money, which means it has the ability to grow and compound tax-free for many years until you trigger it on in retirement. So taking maybe 500,000 in a traditional IRA versus 500,000 the value of a house has a different quality of money to it. What's liquid, what's not, what's taxable, what's not, what might be under for the house long-term capital gains, right? What might not be, as well as like, when can I take that money, right? And could the value of it in the future, a house might grow at 2-3%, right? But how about the value of that money that's going to be growing and compounding year after year? So when we do our net worth, I want you to bring those highlighters out, the blue and the pink one. I want you to write down everything that's in your name, everything that's in your spouse's name. And then we highlight what is liquid, what is not, what is taxable, what is compounded, what is qualified money. What could be titled in just your name? Is the house in your name? Is that something that you brought with you into the marriage? Or is this inherited money, right? That might just be yours. Or did you buy a house with inherited money? Now that's joint, because now it's titled jointly. So we actually want an extra highlighter. We want a blue, a pink, and a green one for that. What's mine? What's theirs? What's joint? And that is part of your net worth. So an equal division might not be equal on the math at the bottom of the ledger.
Yeah, no, that's great stuff for sure. And very important to, to go through, even, hopefully if it's being a civil process as well, then you guys can hopefully, kind of go through that without it being too much acrimony. Right. But sometimes if it's a little uglier, you may have to have people help you with that, because you can't have conversations with each other. That's going to be an important piece. We'll wrap up with that in just a second, but I wanted to mention the third one. So you talked about the beneficiaries, the legacy portion of it, if you will, whatever, how that looks. Are you getting that stuff updated, and what kind of considerations are being made there? Because you may be going through, if you're getting closer to retirement, Donna, there's a good chance your kids are grown. So there's probably not a whole, alimony kind of thing going on.
Yep. And that's a big part of it. So a lot of the times when we have these 401ks and traditional IRAs and Roth IRAs, they have beneficiary designation to them. You want to make sure that you as a spouse are listed. Many of times for those to move during a divorce or at any time, you need to sign what's called a spousal waiver to say that you are aware that your name is being moved out or off of that account. Let's make sure that hasn't been enacted without you signing a spousal waiver, right? And I hate to be a pessimist on this one, but I've seen it happen, right? Where someone has moved someone else out of a lack of caring and it's not legal, right? And so how do we make sure that we have all of that done? Same thing on life insurance. Many of times if there is alimony still involved, right? Like maybe we know that we're getting close to retirement, but the ex or soon to be ex-spouse is not. So then wait, do we want to still have alimony, and do we want to insure that spouse? So if something happens to them, our entire cash flow is based on that alimony. Well, we need to have some life insurance to replace that should something happen to them. So it's a lot of the review. How are things titled? Where's the beneficiary review of that? And for our clients that do move forward with retirement or divorce before retirement, updating that will, healthcare directive, power of attorney. The last thing you want is to be separated in the process of a divorce with an ex-spouse, and they're the person or soon to be ex-spouse made in charge of medical decisions for you, right? Maybe not the best, right? So you want power of attorney
Right.
over healthcare. I mean, yes, I could share stories. The podcast is not long enough for that. So,
well, yeah. And I misspoke. I said, a lot of times at the age we might be going into retirement and getting a divorce later in life, they call them gray divorces. And I said alimony. I meant actually child support, because your kids are probably grown, but you still touched on alimony, which was great as well. But that's usually not the case, when you're talking about a gray divorce or a senior divorce, is because child support is usually kind of off the table because they're grown. But either way, if they're not, that's a factor too. So.
yeah. And you also want to look at your benefits to Social Security. If you were married over 10 years, many of times, even in divorce, you're eligible for 50% of the spouse's Social Security, should yours be smaller than theirs, right? And then my mom was a gray divorce, and my stepfather, after divorce, passed because she was married for so long. She was then eligible for widow's benefit, which was 100% of his Social Security. So she had no clue that that was something down the line. But that is something that you should be considering. Back when we talk about cash flow, what do we have coming in? Do we get 75% of the pension even if we're divorced? Can we make our own decisions with that? Can we seek Social Security? Do we need to? Those are things we need to think about.
Yep. All right. So those are the top 3 things that Donna would certainly suggest you think about, and obviously she deals with this. So I guess the final piece was, this can be a big deal. So obviously this can be a big deal, even if it's, being very friendly and you guys are handling things well. Just make sure you're running the information by a team to protect yourself as well.
Yeah, and I love that you say that a team, because many of our divorce attorneys are very qualified attorneys, but maybe they don't have that financial backing. And so some of the attorneys are giving advice or recommendations on, you should accept that, right? That's where the CDFA role goes in. Many of the attorneys will work with financial advisors like myself that have a CDFA in their office to really look at the quality of the money and the offering there, to really help people understand it. So ask your divorce attorney when you're interviewing one of them, do you have a CDFA on file, or do you yourself have a finance degree or experience with this, before you go ahead and put a retainer in, which can be pretty hefty here, at least in the Philadelphia area.
Yeah, good stuff for sure. So again, we'll wrap it up this week. If you find yourself in this situation, need some help, please talk with a qualified professional. We have the links below to catch up with Donna, get yourself some time onto her calendar. You can find her online at seftonfinancial.com. That's seftonfinancial.com. As always, with anything financially speaking, you want to talk with qualified professionals before you take any action anyway, and certainly in a situation like this as well. But hopefully that helps you out with a few things to think about should you find yourself in this situation. So thanks for your time as always here on Wisdom and Wealth with Donna Kendrick. Donna, thanks for hanging out and breaking it down. Great stuff.
Thank you so much, Mark. Have a good one.
I always appreciate you. We'll see you next time here on the podcast. Find us on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. This has been Wisdom and Wealth.
Registered representative offering securities through Cetera Financial Specialists LLC, member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services are offered through Cetera Investment Advisors LLC. Cetera is under separate ownership from any other named entity. Sefton Financial LLC and Cetera are not affiliated. Sefton Financial is located at 8200 Flowertown Avenue, Suite 1B in Windmore, Pennsylvania, 19038.